From around the world and from CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. And tonight, a special report by Mike Wallace on new Soviet ambitions in Iran.
Good evening. What is apparent tonight is that 8 days of rigid martial law in Poland have not subdued the Solidarity labor movement. There are reports of sabotage, of threatened sabotage, and of worker takeovers in mines and steel mills, the guts of the Polish economy. And perhaps most significant are confirmed reports that the military government now is on a direct collision course with the Roman Catholic Church. Tom Fenton is monitoring the crisis, and he reports from London.
While Polish television tonight ran endless reports about factory workers trying to increase production, the real news was that workers' resistance to martial law is increasing in many areas of Poland. Thousands of coal miners have barricaded themselves in a number of mines in Silesia. In other mines, they have been reporting to work and then singing hymns instead of digging coal. Steel workers have threatened to blow up a steel mill in Katowice. Travelers arriving in Frankfurt reported cases of fanatic resistance elsewhere.
I heard that in one building in the Lenin shipyard there should be some Solidarność people hiding themselves with explosives.
And in Puławy, they say that the army or militia, if they dare step in, they'll blow up the factory in there.
Photos taken clandestinely last week in Warsaw confirmed that there were clashes in the capital. Poland's military rulers have begun putting pressure on the country's most sacred institution, the Catholic Church. The authorities have warned that they will move against the church if it opposes martial law. There are several reports of priests being arrested. In Rome, Assistant Secretary of State Eagleberger began a West European tour to coordinate policy on aid to Poland. The food shortage, long critical, is now assuming dramatic proportions. Polish television has begun running reports on food aid pouring in from the Soviet bloc. A former Polish citizen, just returned from Warsaw, described the situation in the capital.
I have not once have I seen a shop with anything. All I saw in a shop were 2 cabbages, one red and one white.
One way to find out who is winning the struggle between workers and the army is the power index. Broadcast every day in Poland, it shows how much electrical power is available on a scale of 10 to 23. On a normal day, it's 18, indicating that there will be power cuts because of heavy industrial demand. Today, it was 12. Revealing that Polish industry was working at only a fraction of its normal output. Tom Fenton, CBS News, London.
Warsaw Radio tonight broadcast its first substantive report on the condition of Lech Wałęsa, the Solidarity leader. Wałęsa is said to be in custody in Warsaw military headquarters. Warsaw Radio says he's enjoying good conditions and has access to all the media. It says that yesterday Wałęsa was visited by a priest who celebrated Mass, and that Wałęsa also saw his wife and children. Poland today denounced its ambassador to the United States as a traitor who deserted his country for the pieces of silver of Judas. It said criminal proceedings have been started against the envoy, Ramud Spaskowski, who was granted a political asylum yesterday in Washington. The ambassador said afterward that a cruel night of darkness has descended over Poland. It was Poland, as Leslie Stahl tells us now, that got most of the attention today at the White House.
The president chaired an unscheduled National Security Council meeting on Poland as the White House continued to concentrate on the crisis. A spokesman confirmed reports of growing resistance and brutality. In a meeting with Polish-American leaders, Mr. Reagan reportedly flared with anger at the reports of brutal tactics and strongly praised the Polish ambassador who defected to the U.S.
Well, first of all, I admire him for his courage and his declaration of principle, and think that he pointed up the seriousness of this situation.
On the crisis itself, he said he wants it to end.
We don't want it to go on long, and we're going to do everything we can to see that it doesn't.
Afterward, John Cardinal Kroll of Philadelphia said private shipments of food to Poland will be allowed to continue.
The humanitarian aspect must be continued both as a short-range and a long-range policy, not to give the people of Poland, who are the victims in this situation, the impression that they are being abandoned.
The head of the Polish-American Congress claims that a special police squad is conducting unusual acts of violence.
The techniques are very brutal techniques. They'll walk into homes and they will arrest you, whether you're clothed or not, bring you in, throw you into jail. They'll beat you. There are instances where people have been beaten to death because of their viciousness.
Gestapo-like.
A Gestapo type.
Dock workers on the East and Gulf Coast announced today that they will no longer handle any shipments to or from Poland. The only exception, shipments of food from such private organizations as CARE and Catholic Relief Services. The Longshoremen's Union said it was acting in support of human rights. Some advisors are urging an imposition of sanctions against the Soviet Union and a stepping up of statements of moral outrage over the brutality. But so far, the White House continues along a cautious path. There will be an opportunity for some pointed rhetoric tomorrow, however, when the president meets with Romuald Spisowski, the Polish ambassador who defected over the weekend. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, the White House.
Pope John Paul's annual peace message proved prophetic. It was released today, but it was dated December 8th. 5 days before martial law was decreed in his Polish homeland. In his message, the Pope says people have the right and even the duty to defend themselves against an unjust aggressor. The Pope also condemned what he called particular groups for abusing their power to, in the Pope's words, impose their yoke on whole societies.
You buy the best tasting coffee, but coffee is 95% water. You buy the best tasting tea, but tea is 95% water too. So do something about the taste of your water. Get the Instapure water filter by Teledyne Water Pick. Instapure reduces chlorine, sediment, and some organic contaminants. Instapure can give you better tasting water, and that can be 95% of the battle. The Instapure water filter. If it's from Teledyne Water Pick, you'll feel good about it.
Isn't that Ciara?
What does it remind you of?
You smell terrific. Ciara, the thoroughly female fragrance. What will it remind you of?
Prime Minister Begin of Israel is hearing rumblings of discontent in Parliament over his handling of the Golan Heights controversy and his criticisms of the United States. The main opposition party and a smaller faction said today they will present a motion of no confidence in Begin on Wednesday. Bob Schieffer in Washington has been talking with Americans who generally go along with Begin policy. He found that this time there's some rumbling there, too.
Begin's surprise decision to annex the Golan Heights and the bitter words and actions that have followed have had an extremely unsettling effect on Israeli supporters here. At places such as B'nai B'rith headquarters in Washington, the feeling has been one of frustration.
No, I think it's frustrating for all of us, Bob. It's a situation where two allies are fighting with each other. And I think that the frustration grows out of both sides having strong suspicions about each other at a very difficult time in the world.
Maryland Senator Mathias said Begin's surprise move left the president no choice but to postpone the new strategic cooperation agreement with Israel.
I don't see that President Reagan had any real choice except to react. We have a unique relationship with Israel, but we don't have an exclusive relationship with Israel. And we have to think about the other nations in the area.
Some American Jewish leaders privately criticized Begin for going too far in annexing the Golan, but there was wider support for Begin's strong language condemning the U.S. response.
The consensus is that Begin was justified, and I have had calls today from people around the country saying that he had to respond that way.
Hanging over the controversy was worry that the whole thing would somehow trigger new anti-Semitism here.
I think there is latent anti-Semitism in this country, dormant anti-Semitism since World War II that has been reawakened during the course of the AWACS debate. that may indeed be magnified as a result of this dispute?
It was the Senate's Democratic whip, Cranston of California, who summed up the feelings of many here.
Well, I believe that what should happen now is a calming down, a cooling down on both sides in rhetoric and in action.
While Cranston and others have criticized the administration for not having a clear overall Mideast policy, Secretary of State Haig did get high marks today for trying to diffuse the rhetoric. For example, when Haig was asked today if he had a Hanukkah message for Begin, he said only this.
Happy Hanukkah.
Bob Schieffer, CBS News, Washington.
Bill Moyers is here with us tonight with a commentary on this newest trouble between two longtime allies.
Dan, America has no commitment more crucial to a people's survival than our commitment to Israel. We are inextricably linked, and there's the rub. For though we are captives one of the other, our interests cannot always converge. Israel is a small state which has translated the suffering of the Jews into a foreign policy that aims for one thing above all, security and a safe haven. America is a global giant with friends among Israel's enemies. One is a religious state, some of its adherents as devoted to theocracy as the followers of Khomeini in Iran. Another is a pluralistic society, uneasy with official religion. Indeed, Mr. Begin's intemperance may have fallen most unkindly on American Jews, who are deeply loyal to America's tradition of pluralism, but in ways unshakable and understandable are also bound to Israel. The choice between some loyalties ought never to be drawn as sharply as Mr. Begin did yesterday. No one familiar with the world's ways can deny to Israel the right to state its own interest and pursue its own interest as other nations do theirs. But an already difficult relationship between the two countries will only be made impossible if America cannot be critical of Israel when their interests diverge, and if American leaders cannot speak their minds, as Mr. Begin spoke his, without allegations of anti-Semitism. Otherwise, we shall all, Gentiles and Jews alike, be vassals and victims of uncompromising men and events out of control.
Of all the breakfast cereals on the market today, over 100 of them altogether, only a very few are high nutrition cereals. New Buckwheats is one of them. And among the high nutrition cereals, only Buckwheats has a great new touch of honey taste.
Mmm, nice touch.
So, for high nutrition and great taste, New Buckwheats, the only high nutrition cereal with a touch of honey taste.
Radio Shack makes Christmas dreams come true.
Oh, I love the frog.
Cuddly animals with a radio inside.
Maybe Santa will bring it.
The Petable Portable Radios. A Pekingese and raccoon. A frog and a lovable floppy dog. And a cuddly cat or a cute brown spaniel. Furry friends in a musical menagerie that'll delight your kids or teens alike.
Daddy, Santa brought my frog from Radio Shack.
Only at Radio Shack, your Christmas electronics store.
The Coin Laundromat down the block normally is a quiet place, just the whir of the washers and dryers, perhaps some small talk, a place where people catch up on their reading. So it was today in Vincent's Laundry in downtown Sylacauga, Alabama, an Alabama city of 12,000 population. Then the quiet world exploded and caught fire. Pam Olson has our story.
I thought it was a bomb, really.
What many thought was a bomb blast was an explosion inside a coin-operated laundry housed in the same building with an insurance company and a pawn shop. The blast devastated half a city block and was heard 10 miles away.
I just said a prayer right then, and I guess it was answered because I don't see how anybody come out of there alive.
But the 3 persons inside the building did survive the blast, although one has been transferred to a burn unit and another remains in intensive care. Bulldozers worked in freezing temperatures, digging up gas lines to check for a leak which apparently caused the explosion. 40 businesses were damaged. This man's was destroyed.
We are thankful to the good Lord that we had to open up for business and that we didn't have customers in there. Thank God it wasn't 30 minutes later. For 30 minutes later, there would have been more people on the street, and there might have been more people inside of those buildings.
Many townspeople found it hard to believe that no one was killed. Some called it a miracle. Pam Olson, CBS News, Sylacauga, Alabama.
There was no mistaking the official arrival of winter today. Snow and ice storms stretched from the Rockies through the plains and Great Lakes, and record lows came as far south as Florida. Not much more than an inch of snow fell in London today, about enough to decorate the scene as the Blues and Royals of the Household Cavalry returned to barracks. But elsewhere in Britain, more snow created conditions described as chaotic and appalling. And a wicked weekend storm sank a British freighter on its maiden voyage in the English Channel, creating the kind of tragedy achingly familiar to seacoast villages. John Blackstone reports.
The coastal freighter, the Union Star, lies upturned on England's rocky southern tip. The lifeboat that went to her assistance, the Solomon Brown, was destroyed by mountainous waves. Splintered pieces of the lifeboat have been washing up on the rugged coast along with the bodies of the dead. 8 from the freighter and 8 from the lifeboat. Today, the lifeboat Solomon Brown is little more than a truckload of broken wood. The weekend tragedy has reminded the English of part of their seagoing heritage, the volunteer lifeboatmen. The 8 rescuers who died were not members of the Navy or Coast Guard, but virtually unpaid volunteers. All came from the village of Mosul. Population 1,500.
The whole cream of the village had gone in one go. And the people I saw in the various homes were completely stunned. They sort of didn't know what to say.
The volunteer lifeboat crews are found in communities right around Britain's coast. It's been so for more than 150 years. Fred Wallace's son Gary was part of that tradition when he died this weekend.
He loved the sea. That's the way he would have wanted to go. He's an hero, and he always will be, and so the rest of the crew.
The people of Mosul have already asked for a new lifeboat, and there are volunteers who will use it. But the village, which always lights its small harbor for Christmas, won't turn on the lights this year. John Blackstone, CBS News, London.
In every woman there's a place where life and vision interlace, where you look back to see how far you've come, and you know the best has just begun, just begun. This is the place, this is the place, this is the emerald of your life. Welcome to warm afternoons in Gallo-Ride.
Sunny Rhine days with your friends and mine.
Special moments.
The feeling shows. A Gallo toast with the Rhine that flows. Oh, the joy of sharing Gallo wine.
Will we ever have a house like this?
Share the joy of Gallo wine.
The State Department today revoked the visa of the Reverend Ian Paisley, the firebrand Northern Ireland Protestant leader and a member of Parliament in London. Paisley had planned to visit this country next month. The State Department said it has grave concern about what it called the divisive tone of Paisley's recent actions and comments. The State Department had been under strong pressure from some members of Congress to take this action against Paisley. A Paisley spokesman in Belfast said it's a denial of free speech. He said the visa revocation, as he put it, exposes the cant and hypocrisy of the U.S. government, which he said allows IRA sympathizers to come and go without hindrance. The family of kidnapped U.S. Army Brigadier General James L. Dozier waits and worries at their apartment in Verona, Italy. But there is no word from the Red Brigade terrorists who carried him away from his apartment last Thursday. U.S. investigators have joined Italian police in the hunt. Today, Italian police named 2 men they believe were part of the gang, a former post office worker and a one-time law student, both Red Brigade members wanted in a previous kidnapping and a murder. While world attention has been focusing on Poland's agony, the Soviet Union, it turns out, is busy courting Iran. The Soviets are said to have long wanted a warm water port, so that could be one reason for warming up to Iran. Iran, of course, boasts fine ports along the Persian Gulf, in addition to vast oil fields and a strategic position. But whatever the Soviets' motives, there's no doubt about their methods, and Mike Wallace has obtained some new information.
The Soviet Union has begun to make its move in Iran. About 6 weeks ago, the Soviet ambassador to Tehran, Vladimir Vinogradov, brought Moscow's proposal for a mutual assistance treaty to Iran's Prime Minister Mousavi. The next day, the Prime Minister handed that proposal to the Ayatollah Khomeini with a recommendation that it be seriously considered. And Khomeini has been in consultation with those mullahs of the Islamic Republic Party who are especially close to him. There has been no decision yet as to whether to take the step, but Khomeini has been careful not to give any indication to the Soviets that they'll be turned down, for the fact is that he needs the Russians as friends. Chief among the supporters of the proposal is Iran's President Khamenei, and it is being pushed as well by the leaders of the Communist Tudeh party inside Iran. On the other hand, there is a group of more moderate clergy and politicians who are opposed, for they fear what is called the Libyanization of Iran, an influx of Russian weapons and advisors, as has happened with Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. Of course, most of Iran's weapons are American, purchased by the Shah. But Iran can no longer buy spare parts to repair those weapons, which are aging fast, except for a few spare parts furnished them by the Israelis. But Russian weapons are beginning to arrive in Iran, sold to them, with Russian permission, by Syria, East Germany, North Korea, and Algeria. And there are Russian and East German military advisors now in Iran to help the Iranians learn about those weapons. For years, there have been thousands of Russians in Iran. The Soviet embassy there is by far the largest. Indeed, Nikita Khrushchev once declared Iran would eventually drop into Soviet hands like an overripe fruit. The Soviet citizens there have been mainly administrators, engineers, and technicians, working on joint ventures originally set up by the Shah. But in the past 2 months, up to 600 more Soviet personnel have arrived to help the Khomeini regime cope with the current economic chaos and administrative paralysis there. But included in those 600 are 36 known KGB agents who have come in to help Khomeini set up a new intelligence organization. In fact, they are said to be living in a former Savak headquarters. For years, the Soviets have longed to replace the Americans in their neighbor to the south. They are beginning now to move in that direction. Mike Wallace, CBS News, New York.
Some people say our cold, dry winters can age your skin even faster than birthdays. So now especially, I cherish the secret of oil of Olay. Each precious drop eases dryness by replenishing lost fluids. My skin drinks it right in, becoming softer, smoother, dewier. I'm even more careful about my skin in winter. And John says it shows.
This winter, discover the secret of oil of Olay. It can help you look younger too.
There's a man here who's driving me mad, but I can't seem to track him down. I'm not in the habit of following men, but he's wearing a fragrance I find absolutely devastating. So if he can't find exactly what he's looking for, I might suggest something. Cambridge, the gentleman's fragrance women find devastating.
Actress Elizabeth Taylor and her husband, Senator John Warner, have agreed to a legal separation. Her publicist said today neither one has plans for divorce. The Warners, he's a Virginia Republican, have been married for 5 years. This is her 7th marriage. Previously, she was married to Nicky Hilton, Michael Wilding, Mike Todd, Eddie Fisher, and Richard Burton twice. A law-abiding citizen. That's a traditional way for Americans to describe themselves. But Bernard Goldberg reports that description may be heading for the end of the road.
This is the way it's supposed to work. You see a red light, you stop. Pretty simple. But this is the reality that is causing more and more officials to see red. It's being called traffic anarchy, and nowhere is it more blatant than in New York City, where traffic cops at intersections are about as common as Edsels. If running red lights isn't the norm, it comes pretty close. 258 pedestrians were killed during the first 8 months of this year, and that's up 10% from last year. Some drivers at least signal their intentions, even when those intentions are less than honorable.
It may all sound trivial, worrying about cars backed up into intersections and the like, especially with the preponderance of muggings and murders. But it is not trivial, the argument goes, because anarchy, even if it's only traffic anarchy, is putting a big hole in what we like to call the social fabric.
If we don't
stick by the laws that we've written, then the cornerstone is going to fall out on us, and all law enforcement will crumble around our ears.
Why do they do it? It seemed so crazy, we went to a psychiatrist, Alfred Messer of Atlanta.
It's one way they can say, I'm in charge, I'm in control. I may not have control any place else in my life. I have no control over inflation. I have no control over the recession. I have no control over what the gasoline is going to cost next week. But by golly, I have control, and if this is a red light, I'm going through it, and that's my desire.
And it's not just New York either. In the Miami area, police have already issued more than 400,000 traffic tickets this year. That's 80,000 more than all of last year. And the same is true at the other end of the country. San Francisco police gave out more than 100,000 traffic tickets in the first 9 months of the year. Again, more than they issued in all of 1980. The Illinois tollway used to trust motorists to pay the toll until the honor system started costing the state $1 million a year. Now, most of the toll booths have gates.
If you let people get away with small things, then are going to come the big things, and people aren't afraid anymore because they know that there's nobody there to tell them that they are doing wrong or punish them for it.
Whenever you break one rule, whenever you break one law, society suffers because it's so much easier to break the next one.
And desperate city officials in New York have even posted signs beseeching motorists not to block intersections. Does it work? Of course not.
I'm in the midst, I know. I realize that. What do you want me to do? I can't fly on top and I can't go underneath.
What if a cop said to you, hey, pal, you're not supposed to be here, right?
Fine, I'll get out of my car. You move it.
Sophocles said, anarchy, anarchy, show me a greater evil. This is why cities tumble. In ancient Greece, he was a pedestrian. In today's urban America, his observation is anything but pedestrian. Bernard Goldberg, CBS News, New York.
And that's the CBS Evening News for this Monday. Dan Rather reporting from New York. Good night.
Home fires can get a good start before smoke reaches the smoke detector upstairs. Fire prevention experts agree one just isn't enough. First Alert, America's leading producer of smoke detectors, recommends this plan. One smoke detector on the basement ceiling, another on the main floor, and a third upstairs. Your escape route should have the First Alert with escape light. The First Alert plan. The earlier the warning, the more time to escape.
Now there's a new traveling First Alert, too.
The tensions of life today can cause lots of little aches and pains, especially with business conferences, negotiations, and endless stalemates. So when you hit the showers, you need the Steamer Shower Massage by Teledyne Waterpik. It turns your ordinary shower into a luxurious steam room. It also has 8 different settings, including 5 pulsating massages that can relax you or get you invigorated for the evening to come.
There's the kickoff!
If it's from Teledyne Waterpik, you'll feel good about it.
From around the world and from CBS News headquarters in New York, this has been the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
Bobby Kennedy captured our imagination, but was he always the champion of the people Americans thought they knew? Mike Wallace uncovers the remarkable transformation of Robert Kennedy Christmas night.
This is CBS.
A combination of rain and freezing temperatures makes for icy roads and dangerous driving conditions. Details coming up next on Eyewitness News.
What is Christmas without the gift of love? Open your heart first.
From Television 5, this is Eyewitness News with Chris Clark, Jan Ryan, meteorologist Ron Howes, and sports